Asa felt overwhelmed as she watched the enemy hunters closing in. Their numbers were too great, and something had to be done quickly to disrupt their march towards Snake Island. With a heavy heart, she turned to Osei, her lover and her most trusted warrior. "Osei, I need you to take a small team and slow them down. You know what this means," Asa said, her voice trembling slightly, betraying her worry. Osei nodded, understanding the gravity of his mission.
"We will hold them back, Asa. Trust us,"
he replied, his voice steady and full of determination. He prepared to leave, gathering his weapons and looking back at Asa with reassuring eyes. As Osei and his team engaged the hunters with fierce courage, Asa watched from a safe distance. The clash of arrows and the ring of steel filled the air. Asa clasped her hands together, whispering under her breath, "Please keep him safe." From her vantage point, she saw Osei fight valiantly, moving with a warrior's grace. But then, a moment of dread washed over her as she saw him struck down, his body surrendering to the river's flow. "No, not like this," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as she saw the love of her life disappear into the water. Overwhelmed by guilt and sorrow, she murmured, "This is my fault. All of it." To understand the weight of this moment, we must look back to the beginning of that very day. You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. In a secluded village far, far away, a significant event was unfolding. An army had assembled. The village's inhabitants had been quickly evacuated, taking all their belongings with them. Elder Makena stood tall in front of the massive catapults. Piled up were huge balls made of compact cotton and wool, with rocks mixed in, all set to launch. Their mission wasn't to set the forest ablaze, but to fill the air with enough smoke to confuse and disorient the snake people. Hundreds of these smoky projectiles were lined up, ready for action. A distinct scent of the snake people permeated the atmosphere, igniting an ancestral fire within their souls. With a raise of his hand, Elder Makena called for quiet.
"Brothers and sisters, we have gathered here at the edge of the world, united against an enemy as ancient as the blood that courses through our veins. The snake people, elusive and deadly, have revealed themselves to us not by mistake but by fate. It is in their hidden dwelling that we will end their menace, as has been foretold since the dawn of our Brotherhood. You've left everything behind to be here, and the goddess of the hunt honors your sacrifice."
Elder Makena's gaze swept across the faces before him, each marked by the scars of countless battles, each set of eyes alight with the unquenchable fire of purpose.
"To pay tribute to our brother Cabo and his team who discovered Snake Island, they will have the honor of launching the first catapult."
Cabo couldn't help but smile at the recognition. He motioned for his team to gather beside him. Together they began the countdown, voices united. Swords were unsheathed, bows strung, and spirits steeled. The fishing village, once a picture of serene isolation, had become the staging ground for a battle that would echo through the ages.
3, 2, 1.
The missiles were launched into the air quickly, ready to smash everything in their path. The tension was charged, every hunter's heart racing with anticipation as they stood ready to plunge into the fray, their spirits fueled by the thrill of the impending war. Meanwhile, the snake people were fully alert to the scale of the challenge they faced. Asa, their leader, felt a cautious optimism. Their numbers were solid, and with the support of the merfolk, they believed they had a real chance at victory. "Has anyone seen the Mer King?" Asa inquired, scanning the faces around her. In the hectic days of preparing for war, she had been so engrossed that she now realized she hadn't seen him or any of the mermaids since their initial meeting where the Mer King had expressed his concerns. "Osei," she started, turning to her closest confidant and love, "I think we might have a problem here." Understanding the gravity of her concern without needing further explanation, Osei responded immediately.
"I will send someone to him right away."
Naledi stood before the Mer King, hesitating, unsure how to confirm their alliance in the looming war. "Mer King, I greet—" Before she could finish, the distant rumble of explosions cut her off. Panic surged through her. The war had begun. Desperation laced her voice as she spoke. "Queen Asa needs to know if you are withdrawing your support for the snake people in their time of need." The Mer King's response was cold and measured.
Dear girl, remember your place.
Your queen once stood where you are, offering terms that were hardly fair. Your people have overstepped into my realm, continuing to do so. Why would I stop your hunters from solving my problems? I respect your queen, but perhaps it's best if my people and I remain out of this.
As explosions continued in the distance, screams and cries piercing the air, and the faint smell of smoke drifting towards them, Naledi felt a mixture of tears and fury build up. She wanted to lash out at the Mer King, but a tight lump in her throat choked her words. With no time to waste, she turned and swam back to Snake Island as fast as she could. Naledi stood rooted to the spot, her heart sinking as she watched the chaos unfold. This was not what they had planned. Suddenly, massive white balls began raining from the sky. As they crashed to the earth, they burst open, releasing swarms of large stones that shot out in all directions, wreaking havoc and obliterating everything in their path. The air quickly filled with thick, choking smoke from the burning wool, blinding her and making it hard to breathe. She knew she had to make it to the cave. Others would be gathering there for safety. Dodging debris and sprinting through the smog, Naledi finally reached the cave, gasping for cleaner air. Inside, the scene was grim. Injured comrades were scattered around, receiving hurried treatments from those still able to help. At the back of the cave, Queen Asa was coordinating what was left of their defenses. When Naledi's eyes met hers, there was a flicker of hope in the Queen's gaze. But it faded the instant Naledi shook her head, unable to bring any good news. The hope in Asa's eyes vanished, replaced by a deep despair. They had suffered a devastating blow. Now, with their backs against the wall, they needed to regroup and plan their next move. Despite the despair, they were not defeated, not as long as they could still fight back. The cave became a makeshift command center as they prepared to take a stand, not just for survival, but for their people's future. Hours later, Elder Makena gave the order to launch the final barrage of smoke balls. He turned to Cabo with a triumphant grin as the last of the projectiles arched through the sky. The Brotherhood had lined up along the riverbank, swiftly dealing with any remnants of the enemy forces. A grand victory for the Brotherhood, Elder Makena declared, calling everyone to gather around.
Brothers and sisters, victory is within our grasp. Today we bring the war to their doorstep. We strike at their leadership, their queen, and the rest will fall. The boats are ready. May the goddess of the hunt guide us,
He bellowed, raising his sword high. The hunters moved in unison, each team led by their own commander, boarding the boat swiftly. Cabo led his team, Zoro, Nala, Themba, Sia, and Olu, into their vessel. Nala noticed Sia, lost in thought. The poor man had once loved a snake girl, and now he was bound to hunt her down. "Drink this," Nala offered Sia a vial. He took it without hesitation, grimacing at the bitter taste. "You'll be fine," she reassured him with a smile.
Don't I get something too, Nala?
Zoro joked, gesturing for a kiss in a playful manner. Laughter erupted from the team, but Cabo was unamused.
Zoro, we lead this assault. It's a great honor. Don't embarrass me.
He scolded, noticing curious glances from other teams. Zoro's response was cut short as his eyes widened in horror. A massive snake burst from the water, its jaws gaping wide. In that moment of distraction, they had let their guard down on a battlefield, still alive with danger. The team sprang into action, slashing at the beast every chance they got. Soon, the giant snake lay lifeless on the water's surface. As the smoke cleared and the aftermath became visible, the snake people had indeed faced great losses. The ground was littered with the lifeless bodies of snakes of all sizes, a grim testament to the ferocity of the war. Elder Makena and Cabo led the way, their determination burning bright as they silently paddled towards the enemy stronghold, intent on ending this conflict swiftly and decisively. Meanwhile, the dire news of the Brotherhood's approach had reached Queen Asa. "And their numbers?" she asked, hoping that the larger snakes had thinned the ranks of their adversaries. "Still intact," came the unwelcome reply. A bead of sweat trickled down Asa's forehead as she surveyed her gathered people, seeing the fear mirrored in their faces. Asa knew that the hunters' numbers needed to be reduced before they reached the heart of their territory. She gestured to Osei, signaling him to gather a small squad for a preemptive strike. Determined, Osei nodded and quickly assembled a group of their most agile warriors. Their mission was clear: engage the hunters, disrupt their advance, and if possible, thin their ranks to tilt the upcoming battle in their favor. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Asa's heart clenched at the sight of her people's sacrifice. The ambush was meant to weaken the hunters, but the cost was steep. She watched, eyes blurred with grief, as her warriors fell one by one into the Crimson River. The sight of Osei's final brave act, his body swallowed by the murky depths, would haunt her forever. This was the sacrifice they bore for their land, their freedom. This was their final stand, and Asa was prepared to sacrifice everything, just as many of her people had already done. As the remaining warriors gathered, a shared resolve shone in their eyes. Asa raised her voice, her tone both firm and compassionate. "My people, if any of you wish to save yourselves, you have my blessing. We are outnumbered." Before she could say another word, a strong voice interrupted her. "No, Queen Asa, we will fight with you," declared Naledi, stepping forward with a fierce determination. Inspired by her courage, the rest of the group rallied, their spirits lifted. "We stand with you, not out of obligation, but from the heart," another warrior called out, the sentiment quickly echoed by others. The air thrummed with renewed purpose as every warrior present pledged their loyalty, ready to face whatever came with unwavering valor. Elder Makena smiled as he observed the small group of defenders ahead. He raised his voice, booming across the clearing. "My dear hunters, it seems we overestimated our opponents." His words elicited a roar of laughter from the hunters, echoing through the trees.
Make sure no one is left breathing and bring me the head of that troublesome queen,
he commanded with a sinister grin. Yet as his order hung in the air, the smiles faded from the faces of his hunters, replaced by a dawning horror. A strange, unnatural feeling suddenly gripped Elder Makena. His neck felt oddly twisted, as if a cold hand had clutched it. Suddenly his head fell from his body. Asa watched in disbelief as the Mer King and his warriors wreaked havoc among the hunters. The assault was swift and merciless, with the merfolk coordinating their strikes with deadly efficiency. "Get out of the water!" Cabo's voice thundered across the chaos, but his warning came too late for many of his men, who struggled to escape the deadly ambush. Splashing and thrashing, the injured hunters clambered out of the river, their faces etched with pain and shock. It was evident who had dominated this encounter. "We can't let them regroup. Let's finish this," Zoro gritted through his pain, pressing a hand against his bleeding chest. His eyes burned with determination despite his injury. The mermaids and snake people formed a formidable line in the water, their weapons ready, challenging the hunters to dare come back into their domain. "Let's finish this," Zoro urged, but Cabo, seeing the devastation, the cost of this battle, called for a retreat.
"We've lost too much today. We can't risk our entire lineage over this battle."
Meanwhile, Sia's attention was fixed on Palesa, who stood proudly among her people in the river. Her beauty was as mesmerizing as he remembered, a poignant reminder of the love he had once shared with her. "Is that her?" Nala whispered beside him. "Yes," Sia murmured, his voice laden with a mix of sorrow and awe. Nala offered a small, hopeful smile. "Who knew mermaids and snake people could unite? Maybe one day, my dear Sia, maybe one day." As the hunters withdrew, Cabo stood on the riverbank, his gaze locked with Asa's. There was a storm of emotions in his eyes, anger, respect, and a grudging acknowledgement of her people's strength. Though enemies, there was a mutual recognition of valor between them, a silent promise that their paths would indeed cross again. Cabo's gaze shifted to the Mer King, his eyes narrowing as he identified his new adversary. "Next time," he muttered under his breath, "we'll be ready." As the injured hunters limped through the forest, the weight of their defeat pressing heavily upon them, one thing was clear: they would return. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. In their hearts, the seeds of future conflicts were already sowing, promising that the next encounter would be just as fierce, just as heartbreaking, and just as thrilling. And there you have it, my dear tribe members, the much-awaited conflict between the snake people and the hunters. has unfolded before us. I would love to hear from you all. What lessons did you take away from this series? Originally, this story was meant to stand alone, but due to the intriguing questions posed by our tribe, we expanded it, diving deeper with each new tale, until we found ourselves 8 stories deep into this saga. For that, I can't help but smile. As the saying goes, I am because you are. This reflects the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity. Thank you. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.